Welcome to Measurably Better Learning, the podcast built for learning and development professionals. Whether you're an instructional designer, L&D professional, or corporate leader, get ready for insights and ideas that will transform your approach to learning, training, and development. So let's dive in.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Measurably Better Learning podcast. I'm here with my friend, Dr. Jerry Zandstra, and we are doing a series on learning leader as, fill in the blank, lots of things. Today, it's learning leader as innovator, someone who can see around corners, I think is a great way to put it. So from your framework, what do you think that really means when we say we need a learning leader to see around corners?
Yeah, it's an old expression. You'll find it in a lot of like Harvard Business Review kind of articles and leadership articles. It's the ability to anticipate what's coming when it isn't obvious. Anybody can spot the obvious. AI is kind of a big deal, right? But where's it going? And so seeing around corners is you don't have direct line of sight to it, and sometimes it's dark around the corners. So you don't have line of sight and you don't have clear vision. And the interesting thing is that certain people have a great ability to do that. Everybody knows some of those people.
Yes, yeah.
Be like, how'd you see it coming? How did you know? And it might be experience talking. Often it's that, but often it's studied. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think for L&D leaders, really three ways that we look around corners, and I think the first one is industry trends.
Sure, right.
There are some very, very bright people in the L&D world that are constantly on the lookout for new things that are happening, or they are appearing around corners. Doesn't mean they're always right, but following those people, learning from those people, watching what the industry is doing. The second one obviously is technical advances. And, if we were having this conversation, we probably were having this conversation 3 years ago, we'd be talking about the metaverse.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yes,
Before that, we'd be talking about,
there's a lot of virtual reality, which is still there.
AR. No, I don't know about the metaverse. I think that sort of collapsed. But
yeah, I'm not. Yeah.
Maybe Facebook is rethinking, changing their name to Meta. But right, and some people have made some bets like that. Companies have made some bets like that. But I'm constantly paying attention to the technology, because the technology changes so fast. And I mean, even think of in your career, the stuff you started with.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Might have been a mimeograph machine. Okay, not that bad.
No, I think at one school I used the
old pink or purple. Yeah. Okay.
Granted, they were a little behind the times.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. And to the stuff that's available today, which is cool. And then the third place to be trying to peer around corners is really workforce needs. I mean, workforce habits are changing. Obviously, the trickle of work at home, then the avalanche of work at home, and now kind of the return to work and upskilling and reskilling. And some people have been out of the social context of work for 4 years.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
I mean, I have been for a while, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you have to go back to a professional office saying like, okay, I can't wear my pajamas.
Yeah, no.
I can't have wine with lunch, right? These kind of things that you have to pay attention to a little bit. So, I think those are at least three areas where you want to try to peer around a corner.
Well, and you mentioned, I mean, we've all known people who seem to do that better than others. So, but on the other hand, I think it's a skill worth developing.
Oh, yeah.
So why is that so important? But also, probably more importantly, how do we develop that foresight then? What are some ways we do that?
Yeah. The temptation is to think either that people are born that way, which maybe you're born with some intuition or something, I don't know. Or you've just been around so long. There's a point in life where you're pretty much seeing what you're going to see. All you're doing now is seeing it again. right?
Different
I don't know.
maybe. Right.
It's about 50 or so where you go, yeah, I've seen this before. I know it's coming.
Right.
There's something of that, but between I just was born with this intuition and I've just been around long enough to know there's some skill development. I took a graduate course a number of years ago, and it was I can't the word future or futurist was in the title, and I thought, what in the world is going to be is this going to be? And the professor was a really interesting person. This was his job to really companies would hire him to help uh, them see what was coming. And there were certain thought leaders that he followed, religiously. There were journals that he followed. There were, well, now it would be podcasts and websites and so on, that he was always looking for what other people were thinking, and then he would kind of aggregate that. And so our project for the course was to pick a topic or an area or even a company, an industry, and try to see if you could predict
Okay.
what would happen. It's been so long, I had no idea what I chose. May have been gas and oil, but like what was coming, and then you start reading about solar, and you start reading about geothermal, and how do all of these things fit together, and it's the question of where might this industry be in 10 years, and so it is a learned, taught behavior, and find people that do it well, and sometimes you watch a podcast, you're like, wow, that that person isn't coming up with anything new.
Right.
They're aggregating a whole bunch of little dots, and they're pulling it into a picture, and all of a sudden you go, well, of course. But that's a skill that they've developed over time.
Yeah, I mean, so you're saying we don't have to be the smartest person in the room or even have to see around corners,
sit
but
next-
we need to find those
Yeah,
people.
just sit next to the smartest person. It doesn't have to be you.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, when we return, I mean, the next obvious question is what are some trends that we need to be looking at? So we'll get to that when we come back.
Yeah.
Imagine a world where every training session, every learning module, and every translated document is aligned with your company's unique goals and global ambitions. Welcome to Ingenuity, where we don't just talk about elevating your corporate learning, we make it happen. At Ingenuity, we understand the heart of your business is its people. That's why we specialize in creating custom learning solutions and translation services that are not just effective, but are designed specifically for your business's global needs. Let us show you how learning cannot be just better, but measurably better, with solutions tailored just for you. Learn more in the description below.
All right. Well, welcome back. When we wrapped up the first part of this podcast, we were just talking about ways to see around corners, ways to look at the future. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Jerry. What are some of those trends that we need to be? I mean, every year this happens, right? But this year is kind of an interesting year, especially with AI.
Yeah.
I know you're going to go there. So
Last two have been really interesting. I mean, a year ago, AI was just kind of exploding, right? It was coming into the public consciousness. And I don't know that there's a whole lot of clarity. I talked to a good friend this week who had just come back from a 3-day long conference on AI, led by, Ivy League thinkers, and people from all over the world were there, and they were talking about, the disruptive nature of AI, and I asked, and so he described to me, what the conference is like, and I said, well, what'd you learn? He said, we have no idea where we are.
yeah, that's interesting.
And we have no idea where we're going. And he said, I went to this conference with a great deal of hope to come away, not with just some practical how-tos, but, AI is going in this direction, and these are the implications. He said, we have no idea. We have no idea. And there was something a little bit unsettling about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's true overall. But I also think AI sometimes, we think about it, how it's going to impact my job, your job,
Yes. Right.
right? And we don't think about it. If you think about your learners, it's going to touch almost every single one of them. There are very few professions where it won't, especially in a large corporate setting. I mean, there's just very, very few people whose lives are not going to, work life is not going to be drastically different in 5 years. And we don't know how yet.
Right.
So I think, you know, I had said before that, you know, you see around corners, and not only is it not in your line of sight, but it's dark.
Yeah.
And I don't mean this on any kind of like light and dark scale.
Metaphysical.
No, I'm not making a philosophical
Right.
metaphysical point, but it's pretty dark. And some of the brightest people in the world who are nonstop thinking, talking, writing, conversing about this, don't have a strong sense, because the scale and scope is way broader than we thought. The speed is way faster than we thought. And the implications, I think we won't know that for a while. But it's something we have to be thinking about.
Well, I really like that you pointed out we need to be thinking about it more in terms of our learners, because I've been a little disheartened. I listened to, you know, whether it's just people in the industry or just even LinkedIn, other posts, social media from instructional designers or people in L&D, and they only are really thinking about themselves, you
Right.
know, and
I get it.
right.
Very human to do that.
Right. You know, we don't more worried about it, or, well, I use it for this or that, and sort of trying, it's just a tool. And while I agree it's just a tool, and while I agree we need to bring our best expertise to it, there's way more than that in the issue. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's more important. What are your learners going to need to know? How is it going to, and maybe not even just in their job, in their lives, because
Right.
as your learners are impacted at home and in their families, that changes what they bring to work too. So it's something important to think about.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
yeah, well, I guess just my last question, because this is also sort of important, is if you're a learning leader, how do you prepare your organization for these future trends? That's kind of a big question, right? Because it could be different for different trends. But any last thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, you know, especially those in the leadership position, but maybe even those not in the leadership position, having the opportunity to create an environment of continuous learning.
Sure. Yeah.
And
Regardless of what they are, then.
regardless of what the trends are, you're always looking at them, you know, and a natural curiosity about things. I think getting together and simply having discussion, especially over scary things, and AI isn't necessarily scary, but maybe it is. But even like, well, these things are going to disrupt. Even stopping and having lunch and saying, what do you see? That kind of openness and transparency and willingness to talk, and not just plow ahead, but actually think about where you're plowing and where you're going. That's a big one. And investment in technology, not just investment in technology. So investment in technology, you and I have both seen
Yeah,
this,
it's
right?
always been there. Yeah.
You invest in technology. What you don't invest in is teaching people how to actually use it.
Right.
And that happens a lot. Hey, we got a new tool. 2 years will go by. Yeah. There's some help things you might want to look at. There's probably some YouTube videos.
Right.
Actually training people to be proficient in the tech.
Sure.
And I think, you know, learning professionals can be really helpful in pushing their organizations to really think deeply about how are you going to train people to make the best use of this cool new thing.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's a great way to end it. We're always talking about the importance of learning and development teams. So whether it's current, you know, crises or future trends, there's a huge role that we can play in supporting our organization. So thank you, Jerry. Appreciate your insights.
All right. Thanks, Miriam.
Before we wrap up the show, if you're looking to dive deeper, we've got tons of free downloads, L&D resources, and details about upcoming webinars that you won't want to miss. They're found in the episode description. Plus, if you ever want to chat with either one of us, now's your chance. You can find links in the episode description to connect directly with Miriam or me. We're here to answer your questions and to discuss all things learning and development. And speaking of questions, we love hearing from you. Whether it's a question or a comment or a topic you're curious about, or if you just want to join the conversation, drop us a comment on your favorite social media channel. Your input shapes our shows. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. It's the best way to ensure you never miss out on our latest episode. We're excited to continue to transform learning into a measurable success with you. Until next time.